Hello everyone and welcome to Total War Through the Ages. It has been a very long time since this series has been ongoing. So for today is the first episode of Rome Total War Barbarian Invasion, which is the next portion of the Total War Through the Ages series. Now, first off, I want to mention, at the time that I'm recording this, I've already beaten the entire game. The campaign is over. I have all the video footage. I'm just going back now and recording voiceover audio. Some of you might have noticed that I also had an episode up today. This is currently Tuesday, April 25th, and the first episode was supposed to go up today, and it did go up for a short period of time, and then I took it down because I realized that the voiceover audio specifically, was just horrendously messed up. I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna have to re-record it because the first recording, the audio just did not do well in rendering. So I'm gonna re-record it using a different software. I believe that's the problem. Anyway, since I'm having to go ahead and re-record it anyway, I wanted to go ahead and make this little addition to the front and kind of explain some of the stuff and get it out of the way. So first off, the series is already concluded. I have already beaten the game and everything. So I wanted to address that because there's kind of a pro and con to this. The downside, which this is very, very unfortunate, is the fact that I won't be able to incorporate feedback, like, from the comments as these videos go out, as each week when an episode is released. I won't be able to take the feedback from comments and stuff and incorporate them in terms of strategy or tactics or like just trying out interesting ideas. So while I won't be able to do that, and that is a big bummer, and that, again, I wish I could, but due to the issues I ran into last series or the last time, and the fact that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure that the series got done and had a video came out every week. I'm trying to kind of tripping over my words. I do apologize. This audio is a little bit loud. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that I wanted to make sure I had the consistency of every week, and during seeing how my life and my schedule right now, I couldn't guarantee doing it if I was recording it as I went. So I decided to record the entirety of it, and everything's done. And so now it's just a matter of the episodes being released. So the other benefit of it is I will be able to, over the course of the series, in my commentary, I will be able to actually provide a little more in-depth discussion about some of the stuff because I already know what I do to win. I already know changes that I make that are effective and stuff like that. And so I can kind of better talk about as the stuff is ongoing in the campaign. I can say like, okay, here's some stuff I did early on and it didn't work out so well. And then when I get to it later on, it's like, okay, this is what I did to improve upon it. As where with Rome Total War, it was mostly me I had no idea what I was doing basically. And if it weren't for some really awesome commenters, I would not have been nearly as successful at that game as I was. So this time around, I was able to kind of figure things out on my own, largely due to the base that I built from Rome Total War initially anyway, because these games are essentially the same in terms of the combat mechanics and everything for the battles. Obviously, they're quite a bit different in a lot of kind of the unit rosters are very different, but the basic mechanics operate the same. So having the knowledge of that from Rome really helped me in this. The main other thing I wanted to address is I am playing as the Sassanids in this one. That's due to the fact that the couple comments I did get wanted to see me play as the Eastern faction, and someone actually specifically said by name the Sassanids, so that's why I ended up going with them. So without further ado, I'll get into the main portion of the episode. I just wanted to kind of tack this on there and explain some of what was going on. And I hope you guys enjoy, and I have to say I'm really glad that this is back, and I really missed this series, so I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it. Hello everyone, and welcome to Barbarian Invasion. Starting things off, for the first episode, we are going to be playing, as usual, on hard difficulty for the Battleland campaign, and we're going to be trying out the Sassanids. Right off the bat for the Sassanids, the main thing that's going to take some getting used to is the fact that we're playing as a faction that is cavalry based, as where prior to this we were playing as a Roman faction who rely very heavily on heavy infantry. So as the Sassanids, we don't really have heavy infantry. I get a couple units of heavy infantry later on, but for the most part, we don't really have access to train in large quantities heavy infantry. And I'll kind of explain that in detail when we get there. And so with this, we're going to be relying predominantly on cavalry. So, I will say the Sassanids have good cavalry from the looks of it. I don't know how they compare to a lot of other factions in Barbarian Invasion, but compared to the Eastern Roman Empire, which is kind of the main faction we're dealing with for most of this campaign, our cavalry seems to be pretty superior to theirs. I mean, not to say they have terrible cavalry. They have some decent of their own, but overall, we're able to get ahead on that front. So for these first couple turns, well first off, I want to mention I'm not going to be editing down a whole lot out of this first turn or two, mostly just because I wanted you guys to kind of show or see. I wanted to be able to show, I should say, everything that I do in this first couple turns, and then I'll start editing stuff more heavily in future episodes. So starting things off, I focus primarily on getting my economy up and running. And it takes a while. I will say the economy in Barbarian Invasion takes quite a while for us to really get to the point where our economy is stable and we're able to, and like I said, it takes a while for our economy to get stable and to the point where we're not having to worry about our income from turn to turn. That said, we are also going to be starting out fairly aggressive. Now, initially when I was playing this, I didn't plan on being as aggressive as I end up doing, as you will see in these first couple in this first episode. But it was sort of an opportunistic tactic or strategy that I sort of just went with, because it's like, hey, I had an opportunity, I took it, and we'll see how it works out. Starting things off, we're trying to just move units to the front line. The city of Hatra that you see on the left side of your screen there, that is the main place that I was expecting to be attacked, because it's closest to the Eastern Roman Empire, who we are at war with already. And I wanted to get walls constructed there. I'm actually constructing stone walls there. And as you can see, they're already moving an army that way, so I was kind of already expecting it to come under siege, and I wanted to make sure I had a large enough force there to defend it. Additionally, another general principle for this campaign I learned to kind of really enjoy was the use of agents. Like here, my assassin, spy, and even my diplomat to a large extent, I use as scouts. So the spy and assassin obviously makes sense, but the diplomat even I send to basically just do scouting missions, because I find that it's very, very useful knowing where the enemy armies are, and it allows me to employ a lot of like hit and run tactics with my cavalry forces. So, and as the campaign goes on, you'll start to see that a little bit more. In this first couple episodes, I don't really have the forces to do that. I don't have I don't have two field armies that I can work with. As we're later on, once I get my economy up and running and I can support, having two decent sized armies in the field, I can, I'm able to utilize that a little bit better. Right here we have a rebel settlement which we are going to be sending an army to go capture, because that's going to kind of be like our first conquest in terms of a new settlement, and I wanted to expand as rapidly as possible, because that also is going to be a big help for our economy. Being able to get more cities, and again, more city means more money coming in. So that's kind of the small force we have there. I fiddle around with what units we're going to use, but that's basically the army we're going to end up using. I think I get a couple more units to it. But meanwhile, we're going to try and send an army up to the north of Hatra and try and get around through some of those mountain passes and attack the enemy in kind of behind their front lines a little bit, and that way we don't have to deal with some of their field armies, because at this point I was like, okay, Hatra will be able to defend itself with the army I have there, and once it gets stone walls. So I'm thinking my initial strategy was let Hatra kind of defend itself. The Eastern Roman Empire will send some armies against Hatra. So long as I can hold on to it, we're fine. And then I can have a small army kind of going behind the front lines, avoiding their larger armies, which they'll be sending to Hatra, and kind of wreak some havoc on some of their settlements, maybe capture one or two. Then, of course, that would be incredibly beneficial. So that was the initial strategy starting out. And, of course, as with everything, we have to adjust and, adjust based off of what happens. So right here we have, as you can see, a very sizable force in Hatra. Now the only downside is Eastern Roman Empire, as I said, they have heavy infantry. We do not. So even though I have a sizable army there, if they have a sizable army, I have a bunch of spearmen, which aren't going to be great against like the equivalent of legionaries, you know, kind of heavy infantry with swords and shields. Spearmen are not going to be great against that. So at this point, the army, I didn't have an army inside of Hatra, so I figured, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull some of our infantry. We've got a turn or two to train more troops. So we're going to go ahead and pull some of the infantry out to kind of support our cavalry force up in the north, because there's a sizable enemy army there. So, like I said, my initial strategy of trying to avoid their larger armies with my cavalry force didn't really work out. They had an army in the north that I did not know about, so it looks like we're going to have to end up fighting them as well. Next up, we've got, as you can see here, again, I'm waiting on my economy to get started. We're not making a whole lot of money every turn. We're making a decent amount. But the next turn over, we get attacked. I actually use the withdrawal function, which I didn't use very often during Rome Total War. And this is something that on the campaign as a whole, I actually use this function a lot more, specifically with some of my armies that are predominantly cavalry, because the cavalry have better movement than infantry. So if the enemy army has infantry in it, which most of their armies do, I will actually be able to withdraw successfully, as where the enemies won't have enough movement to actually chase me if my army only has cavalry. My peasant unit beat their peasant unit, so haha. But then their main force comes over, and I've already withdrawn once with this army, so we're not going to be able to again, unfortunately. Quick auto-resolve, because there's no way we're winning that. And we're able to get some line of sight on some of their movements going around, so we kind of have an idea where some of their armies are, which will better allow me to make a better decision on where to send our army. And then we're going to form this army up here, and we're going to continue pushing north, and we're actually going to relatively quickly get into our first battle. I decide to go ahead and be a little bit aggressive here. We do outnumber them. We have the advantage. So we're going to just go ahead and jump right on to the first battle of the series. So for this first battle, I'm going to not edit a whole lot out either, since it's kind of same idea as with the not editing a lot out of the first couple turns of the campaign. And this is just to show you guys a basic idea of what I start out with, what my basic tactic is. And then we'll you'll over time, over the course of the campaign, kind of see how I adjust and develop my tactics. So to start things off, I'm doing pretty standard skirmishers up front, infantry behind, and then I'm going to have cavalry on the flanks. For my basic tactic early on was, I knew that I was going to have to rely on cavalry, so my Calibani, I think is how you would say their name, my heavy cavalry here, they're actually really awesome. They're probably my favorite unit of the Sassanids that I use throughout this campaign. And one of the things that I really like about them is they are horse archers. They are heavy cavalry, but they also have bows, so they actually can function as horse archers, which is really awesome. A lot of the Sassanid units are, even like I think there's one or two of their heavy cavalry units, the Calibani, and then one other one that we get later on, are like heavy cavalry horse archers, basically. And then, of course, we have our light cavalry horse archers, which, you know, they're very light cavalry. They're not particularly tough, but they are horse archers, which end up being really effective for us. So my initial idea was, okay, I'm going to have maybe like a couple units of heavy cavalry to kind of to be able to do those, kind of shock tactics, get those charges in, and break the enemy units. And then we're going to have like a couple units of infantry to kind of be like our core, so that the enemy has something to go against, and then our cavalry can charge in from the flanks, specifically our heavy cavalry. And then I wanted to have, probably equal numbers of horse archers and light cavalry. And the only light cavalry unit we have access to is actually camel riders. So I figured, okay, camel riders are going to basically be our light cavalry force, and our horse archers are going to kind of be our skirmishing units. So the main thing is that horse archers do. The main issue is that our horse archers, while very effective, do have some like 1-to-1 ratio of a horse archer unit versus just a regular archer unit. The regular archer unit seems to do to be able to hold their own. And as you can see, the Eastern Roman Empire has a unit of archers there as well. They actually have a unit of horse archers themselves. That's an interesting thing I did not know going in, was that the Eastern Roman Empire actually has access to horse archers as well. Now, obviously, mine are a little bit better, and the AI never seemed to get a lot of horse archers. So overall, I'm going to be able to kind of hopefully outpace them. I charge in my unit of camels, and I route the archers initially, but then my camel riders route and the enemy archers are actually able to rally. So not great there. My camel riders don't do particularly well in this battle, or really any of the later ones. There's a couple battles they work out for me, but for the most part, they don't seem to be particularly good as light cavalry. They're not terrible, but again, I wasn't really satisfied with what they ended up doing. So our heavy cavalry, on the other hand, very effective, and we're able to get some charges on. And overall, this battle was not a very difficult one. I had some decent casualties, some fairly substantial casualties, but for the most part, there was never any danger of us losing this fight. The main other thing I should mention as well is that the enemy infantry, they actually have spear infantry as well, which this is something that is pretty different from Barbarian Invasion versus the original Rome Total War. In the original Rome Total War, well, obviously we were playing as a Roman faction, so our unit composition was going to be different, but even when we had a lot of cavalry in our Roman armies, we still never had to deal with infantry. Deal with spearmen, I should say. Most infantry units in Rome Total War are sword and board, unless you're going up against like the Macedonians or the Greeks, who they have a lot of pike and spear infantry, and the Carthaginians to a certain extent as well. But a lot of like kind of the northern barbarian factions, like the Gauls, the Germanic tribes, and the Spanish, they were all factions that none of them really had spear infantry. And if they did, it would only be 1 or 2 units. They wouldn't have substantial quantities of spear infantry. Well, in Barbarian Invasion, like for the Sassanids, our main infantry unit, like really kind of our only like melee infantry unit, really, there are levy spearmen. And even the Eastern Roman Empire, who they still have like the equivalent of legionaries, they're heavy sword and they're heavy infantry with sword and shield. Basically legionaries. They have javelins and everything. They also have spearmen, which are like it's the Legio Lancer. It's basically like spear legionaries, and they actually have, and they also actually have throwing weapons, so they can actually throw weapons, but they are armed with spears. And that is actually something that was very interesting to deal with, because I wasn't used to it in Rome Total War. So coming into Barbarian Invasion, that's something that did take some getting used to, is like the fact that there are a lot of enemy spearmen. A bunch of their armies have quite a bit spear infantry in it, as where, previously it would be maybe 1 or 2 units in an entire army for the most part. The other main difference as well is that since we are playing as the Sassanids, we are a cavalry-focused faction. So a lot of cavalry versus spearmen, that can be tricky. So the main focus was I wanted to try and split the enemy army up. This was kind of the tactic that I developed fairly early on. Is like, okay, if they have a bunch of spear infantry, you want to split the spear infantry up, and then basically have your cavalry charge in from multiple directions, and preferably like not head on, so that the enemy spearmen aren't able to really be that effective against your cavalry. But either way, we kind of mop up the rest of the battle. I know I wasn't commentating on the battle that much, but again, it was a pretty straightforward affair. So we are coming to the end of the first episode here. I do apologize on the delay of this episode going up as well. I'm having to re-record this audio that you are hearing right now. However, so we are checking out this city right here. I don't know the name of it. I do apologize for that. But that city was actually the original intended target for my army. I was like, okay, we are going to attack that city. We are going to besiege it and capture it, because it has a relatively weak garrison. So I was hoping, hey, we should have a large enough army to do it. However, I moved some units up here, and I'm like, well, hold on. Antioch has like no units in it, and neither does that city to the west of Antioch. And I was thinking, man, that city in the north, I could probably capture it with my army, but I don't know if I could defend it. I don't know if I could hold it long enough to like build up a force there, because there's always going to be usually a couple turns, a period of a few turns where you're trying to get your basically not have the city revolt or anything. So I wasn't confident in my ability. I was confident I could capture the city, but I didn't know if I'd be able to hold it. Also up there in the north, you saw me send my army to to besiege the rebel settlement. Also moving one of our generals from the back lines up. So yeah, it was basically just came down to, was I going to try and go for that city in the north, or was I going to send it south? And I ultimately make the decision to send it south. I don't know if we actually get to that in this episode, because as I said, we are almost to the end here. So we do a bit more scouting, and it was kind of one of those things of like, you know, Antioch's really lightly defended, so is that place right next to it, and it's like, you know what? We could go for this one, but I wasn't feeling confident in our ability to hold it, so I was like, okay, we're going to try and go for Antioch, and if we can capture Antioch, it'll be a lot easier to defend because it's right next to Hatra, so it's kind of like just a more natural expansion. Either way, that's all we have for this episode. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all are going to enjoy the series as much as I had fun filming it, and without further ado, as always, till next time.